Hello there everyone, my name is Oversoul and welcome to my top 10 games of 2018 countdown list. Like always, I have a couple of rules and disclaimers that I'd like to go over before we get started. First of all, remakes, remasters, and re-releases are not eligible. Only new games that came out this year. So, Spyro Reignited Trilogy, for example, would not be eligible. However, there is an exception to this rule, and that is episodic games. Episodic games are only eligible in the year they were finished, not the year that they started. So this year, Life is Strange 2, for example, would not be eligible. However, Bendy and the Ink Machine would be eligible. Also, games that I have not played rightfully cannot be on this list because I haven't judged something that I haven't tried. So even though it probably deserves to be on this list, I'm sorry, but Red Dead Redemption 2 is not on this list because I haven't played it. It's not my fault, I just didn't have the money for it. And finally, this list is 100% completely subjective, which means it's based on my personal taste, not what's popular, not what the reviewers like, but my personal taste, the games that I enjoyed this year. So with all that in mind, sit back, relax, and enjoy. Donut County is the kind of game that many people would pass over at first glance, which is sad because it's a very fun and addicting game. In the game, you play as this raccoon who controls this hole with an app on his phone. Every time someone orders a donut, they are greeted with this hole instead, which slowly grows bigger as it swallows up everything around them, and eventually, them. You move the hole around, swallowing smaller things at first and eventually bigger stuff as the hole grows. Eventually, you'll be faced with minor physics puzzles as well, like having to drain water or shoot rockets to accomplish your goal. The story follows the victims of the raccoon's mischief as they teach him important life lessons about friendship and responsibility. And the gameplay is so simple, literally anyone could pick it up and play it.
Hey, Vincent, what's your plan after this?
I don't know. Haven't really thought about it.
You haven't thought about it? That must be a first for you, Mr. Overthinker.
Not the best game to come out this year by any means, but A Way Out is some of the most genuine fun I've had with a game this year. I played this game with Funky Hurdles and we had a blast. The story follows two convicts who were wronged by the same mob boss, so they work together to break out of prison, survive on the run, stop for the occasional minigame, and potentially get sweet revenge. The co-op aspect is utilized in seamless, natural ways that make it feel like you're playing a movie, such as when one of you may need to distract a guard while the other steals a screwdriver, for example, or during a car chase where one must drive and the other shoot. Also, the game presents difficulty in a realistic way. For example, the harder it would be to accomplish the task in real life, the harder the QuickTime event is on the player. Mechanically, this game reminds me of Uncharted, but it's more akin to a movie you'd find in Walmart's bargain bin. That doesn't make it bad though. Like Until Dawn, this game is aware of its cliches and embraces them, and I can respect that. If you play this, I highly recommend playing it with someone you're close with, like a best friend or significant other, as it'll really help drive home the impact of not only the narrative, but just the game in general.
What the hell are you talking about?
Don't let a single one get away!
The title of this game is very appropriate, as it is the ultimate Smash Bros. Game, featuring every single character from the previous entries, including some new faces and more yet to come. Smash Bros. Ultimate takes everything about its predecessors, expands upon, and improves it. The combat feels more fluid and natural, even heavy characters don't feel as clunky as they used to, everything just seems to flow better. You can now customize sets of rules in Smash mode, making for an enjoyable experience for all ages and skill levels. Also, triggering unlockable character fights isn't based on grinding battles anymore, but rather player input and time played, so characters take longer to unlock, which I appreciate as it adds to the game's longevity. Also, the addition of spirits to the game adds a sort of RPG element that I enjoy. During adventure mode, you travel this map, unlocking fighters and spirits alike. The spirits are characters that can be equipped to your fighter, giving them stat boosts and/or special weapons and abilities. Spirits come in 4 flavors: fighter, defender, tactician, and neutral, each one more powerful than the other in a rock, paper, and scissors style. Each battle in adventure mode will present you with obstacles, such as high winds or the floor is lava, and you must utilize the abilities of different spirits, such as Snorlax's high wind resist, to overcome them. I was a little disappointed that adventure mode isn't more cutscene heavy like Brawl was, but overall I think it makes for a fun, challenging experience, and the first Smash game that I'd buy a strategy guide for.
Are you a dream?
A sleeper hit released by Ubisoft and Elijah Wood this year, Transference is a first-person escape room thriller where you attempt to escape a corrupted mind. Made for VR but playable without it, Transference is another blurring of the lines between game and narrative experience. A distraught scientist recruits your help to help save his family's souls from this simulation, but once inside you learn not all is as it seems. What exactly happened, how the family became trapped here, and what their life was like before is all revealed through live-action video logs you pick up that add a sense of realism to this experience. Using live-action acting makes the family feel real and makes you care about them more. Puzzles are simplistic, but involved, oftentimes forcing you to use the light switches to switch perspectives between different versions of the apartment in order to solve them. There's also the ever-looming threat of the Pixel Monster to look out for, as he has a habit of surprising you at the most intense moments. This game will sadly fly under people's radars for sure, but at only 2.5 hours long, I highly recommend that you try it if you appreciate innovation and games as an art form.
Well met, my own true love. Well met, cried he. For I've returned from the salt, salt sea, all for the love of thee.
All right, Joey. I'm here. Let's see if we can find what you wanted me to see.
Although Bendy technically came out in 2017, the final 2 chapters released this year, which means it's now a complete game and therefore eligible for my list. Bendy and the Ink Machine is a first-person horror adventure game with puzzles, combat, and stealth. It follows protagonist Henry as he visits the old cartoon studio he once worked at, only to find it abandoned with telltale signs that something bad happened. Soon, he gets attacked by a demonic version of the very cartoon he worked on, and that's when things get real. Bendy and the Ink Machine is the kind of horror game I appreciate for focusing on psychological horror and visual stuff like body horror over cheap jump scares and excessive horror cliches. Although, it does have some of those too. Bendy takes a lot of inspiration from other horror games and implements them in ways that often works, but sometimes doesn't. But all the while maintaining this weird charm that is unique to this game alone. It's hard to place my finger on it, but among all the horror and chaos, there's a weird somber melancholy to it all, not unlike Soma. Sure, the ending feels rushed, but I would say this game is more about the journey than the destination, and it's one journey I won't soon be forgetting. Octopath Traveler is a JRPG done in the classic sprite graphics and turn-based combat style that a lot of fans of classic Final Fantasy will appreciate. In the game, you play as 8 different characters, each traveling their own path, hence the name. You start with one who becomes your permanent party leader and then travel from town to town hearing the stories of other characters and adding them to your party as you go. Each character has their own weapon and skill set that usually makes them invaluable in the area you collect them, as battles will challenge you in this department. In this game, combat is turn-based, but there's a catch. Enemies have shields that have to be weakened by exploiting their weakness before you can do any real damage to them. These weaknesses are revealed through abilities or by swinging blindly until something works. While you can tackle the characters' stories in any order, keep in mind that enemies scale to your level and party size, so the stronger you are, the stronger they are. I remember one boss battle alone took me 45 minutes. But this is a good thing. This is exactly the kind of classic Final Fantasy-styled JRPG fans complain that you don't see anymore. This game fills that void, and it does it well. And don't even get me started on the soundtrack. It's by far my favorite game soundtrack this year. Octopath Traveler is easily a must for any JRPG fan.
The hunt ends.
Let's see just how good their security is. Oh, you guys forgot the latest kernel patch.
Hiding so cowardly, even for you.
Says the guy frantically erasing his search history.
Not since the Batman Arkham games have I played a superhero game as good as this. The new Spider-Man is the definitive example of how to make a Spider-Man game. Not since the PS2 and GameCube have we gotten a Spider-Man game this good. Now, I won't say the story is anything groundbreaking. If you're familiar with superheroes, you know where it's going, but there are some nice twists and surprises that I won't spoil. But basically, the story follows Peter facing a new villain, Mr. Negative, who busts some of Spider-Man's most famous villains, such as Rhino and Scorpion, out of prison, and now we must do the hero thing, defeat them all, and save New York from a fatal catastrophe. Where this game actually stands out is in the gameplay. Swinging from buildings feels fluid and natural, combat flows nicely, and the timing of everything is well done. The open world feels alive and bustling, and even collectibles are easy to find because of your friendly neighborhood waypoint marker. This is the kind of sandbox game that people who hate sandbox games would actually enjoy. It takes a lot of inspiration from the Batman Arkham games, all the way down to unlocking and upgrading gadgets to give you an edge in combat, but that's a good thing. If it's not broke, don't fix it, right? At times, it can feel repetitive, but overall, it's a super fun game with constant new things to discover, stuff to unlock, and thugs to paralyze. There's also some nice Easter eggs to other Marvel heroes. If you enjoyed the Arkham games, or the older Spider-Man games, definitely give this one a go. Moss is a PlayStation VR exclusive where you control both yourself and the little mouse Quill. In a unique style, although you control both, the game treats you and Quill as separate entities. You are the reader, an audience member / guardian in Quill's story who guides her along her journey by interacting with objects in the environment to help her solve puzzles and traverse the terrain. Quill is also aware of your presence and will often interact with you in celebration or frustration. Since the game is presented in a first and third person format simultaneously, you sit on the outskirts of each stage, where you can see the section of the level in front of you. The game plays heavily on depth perception, so sometimes you may have to lean in to peek around corners and find stuff you couldn't see otherwise. For such a cute game, though, it can be challenging at times. Puzzles can be frustrating and enemies can be overwhelming. But with enough perseverance, you will succeed, and you and Quill will breathe a collective sigh of relief or give each other a high five, and it's at that moment you begin to realize just how immersive this game really is.
about you. I've come to get you out of this.
If Spider-Man is the definitive example of how to do a superhero game, then Detroit Become Human is the definitive example of how to do choice-based narrative games. In a similar vein to Heavy Rain, Detroit follows the stories of several characters, Kara, Marcus, and Connor, androids who deviate from their programming and start to feel human emotions like love and sadness. Now, all they want is to be treated like humans and be given the same rights, and it's up to you, the player, to decide if that happens, how it happens, and who lives and dies along the way based entirely on your choices or lack thereof. The narrative of this game feels inspired by Black Mirror, and it shows in some sections when they start flirting with horror. David Cage may deny it, but the parallels to racism, slavery, and POW camps are all blatantly obvious, with Marcus being a spot-on stand-in for Martin Luther King Jr., but it helps drive home the narrative and really makes you feel for the androids. You care about them, you want them to live and succeed, and you will do everything possible to see that happen. Compared to other David Cage games, the stakes are also much higher in this one. There are many stressful, suspenseful moments where one little slip-up could mean the difference between peaceful surrender, heroic sacrifice, or mass execution. Also, choices matter more than they ever have. This isn't some Telltale thing where it ends the same way anyway, so no. This game has many endings, and a lot of them are super depressing. Players must be very careful with choices in this one, and sometimes may have to do things that they are morally against in order to survive. Consequences of choices in this game are severe. Besides that, this is one of the first games of its kind to feature actual gameplay. Sure, it's still full of choices and quick-time events, but there may be sections where you are chasing someone or being chased, and instead of the character running on their own and you just doing quick-time events, you actually have to control the character running on top of doing the quick-time events. It makes for a more involved, more challenging game where failure could cost you everything. It's definitely the best game of its kind thus far.
Don't move!
Before we get to my number one, I want to do something that I wouldn't normally do, but this year it was actually really difficult to come up with a top 10 list because I played so many games this year that I actually really enjoyed that I really had to whittle it down. But there were a few games I played this year that even though they didn't make my top 10, I do feel like they deserve some form of recognition. So for the first and hopefully last time during one of my top 10 videos, here are a few honorable mentions. And now, the moment that you've all been waiting for. If you know me at all, or have been paying attention to my social media pages, this should come as no surprise to you. This is also the first time my personal game of the year is the same as the official game of the year. God of War is very deserving though. This new entry is a soft reboot similar to Resident Evil 7 or Mass Effect Andromeda, meaning that even though it's canonical to the previous entries, it also works as an entry point for new fans. starting a new chapter in the character's story. This fresh start for Kratos is actually more impactful if you played the previous games, however. See, in the old God of War games, Kratos was driven solely by revenge. Revenge on the gods, specifically. And he didn't care who or what stood in his way, innocent or not, killing god after god and raining death and destruction upon the populace of ancient Greece in the process. Now, after hightailing it to a different mythology and starting a new life, Kratos is wiser and older and is attempting to atone for his sins by doing right by his son Atreus and making sure that he doesn't go down the same dark path that he did.
What are you doing? Now his guard is up. Only fire. Only fire when I tell you to fire.
During their journey to spread the ashes of Atreus' dead mother, the estranged father-son duo bicker and bond, and Kratos starts to show emotion in ways that you wouldn't expect from the stern and solemn ex-mass murderer.
Mind your tongue, boy! Until our journey is over, one of us must remain focused. Do not mistake my silence for lack of grief. Mourn how you wish. Leave me to my own.
Gameplay-wise, it's nothing groundbreaking. God of War follows in Assassin's Creed Origins' footsteps by turning into a more open-world RPG with Dark Souls-inspired combat. You solve puzzles, hack-and-slash enemies, craft armor, and retrace steps to unlock stuff you couldn't before because you didn't have the right ability or item. But where this game really truly stands out is the narrative and the art direction. Even the single-shot camera work, to me, is pure genius. Compared to everything else that came out this year, this game is on a higher plane of existence. It is more sophisticated from an artistic standpoint, and to me, it sets the bar for what future game developers should aspire to.
Remember, accuracy over speed. Nice shot.
So there you have it, there's my top 10 games of 2018. What did you think of my list, and what were your favorite games this year? Let me know in the comments down below. And if you truly genuinely enjoyed this video, go ahead and leave it a like, because it lets me know I'm doing something right. And as always, thank you all so much for watching, and I will catch you, possibly on another day, definitely at another time, and likely in another video. Okay, goodbye.